All right, today we're going somewhere most people never get to see. We're jumping right into a raw, first-hand account of life inside a high-security psychiatric facility, a place our source simply calls Blacksite, Berlin. And let's just dive right in with this quote because it sets the tone perfectly. In the narrator's eyes, this isn't a hospital. It's a place where people are sent to be forgotten. And you have to understand, that one idea, that perspective, it colors everything else that happens within these walls. So to really wrap our heads around this place, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. First up, we'll get the lay of the land. Then we'll dive into this secret underground economy. After that, we'll look at the strange power dynamics between the staff and the patients, check out some truly unique survival strategies, and finally, explore the all-consuming fantasy of escape. Okay, so our first deep dive is into the patient-run economy. You see, inside there's this whole other world, a complex black market for anything and everything you can smuggle in. It has its own rules, its own insane prices, and right at the center of it all, you have the station dealer. Now, check out this dealer's journey. It's like a revolving door. He's selling weed at these crazy markups, someone rats him out, and he gets moved. But, and get this, the new station is actually easier on him, and he eventually gets out. Of course, it doesn't last. He gets busted dealing again on the outside, and boom, he lands right back where he started. And this right here, this just shows you how ridiculous the whole system is. When he comes back, the staff's search is so sloppy that he manages to smuggle in 200 grams of cocaine in his underwear. 200 grams. That's a fortune in a place like this. Overnight, he goes from just another patient to the undisputed kingpin of the whole station. You know, a failure like that naturally brings us to our next point, the dynamic between the staff and the patients. The story keeps pushing this question, and it really makes you wonder, who's the crazy one here? Just look at this. It's an incredible double standard. The narrator tells the story about a guard who loses it during a game of pool, gets furious, and just smashes a cue right over his knee. And for the guard, nothing. Absolutely no consequences. But imagine if a patient did that. Instant lockdown, straight to the isolation cell, probably pumped full of meds. And that's where you see this huge power imbalance, right? This quote sums it up pretty bluntly. The staff can basically do whatever they want. Why? Because who's going to believe a patient who's officially labeled crazy? Their complaints mean nothing. Their voice is just gone. So put yourself in their shoes for a second. You're locked up, maybe forever, with no clear way out. How do you cope? Well, people come up with some, let's just say, unique strategies to get through the day. Okay, check this out. There's this one patient who has a medication side effect that gives him this horrible, restless feeling, like he has to be moving. So this guy just paces all day long, back and forth down the same 20-meter hallway. The only problem? His body odor started to really get to another patient who lived on that hallway. So the other guy complains to the staff, but of course, nothing happens. So he takes matters into his own hands. And this is where you get this moment of pure, dark, institutional genius. He goes out and gets one of those motion-activated air fresheners and sticks it in the hall. Now, every single time the pacer walks by, shh, he gets a little spray of deodorant. Problem solved, I guess. All right, next up, we've got a guy whose entire reality is built around the legal system. He is 100% certain that through lawsuits and his lawyer, he's not only going to get out, but he's going to become a millionaire, no matter what anyone tells him. So look at the numbers. He gets about 2,100 euros a month, and almost all of it, 1,900 euros, goes straight to this so-called super lawyer. But here is the absolutely brutal twist. This lawyer, he's secretly dating the guy's ex-wife. So all that money he thinks is for his legal defense, it's basically going straight into her pocket. Okay, so our next character is a former gang member, a guy with a serious history of violence. And his way of coping, well, it's this wild mix of terrifying fantasies and, honestly, just bizarre Hollywood dreams. Yeah, his goals were ambitious, is one word for it. On one hand, he's planning to become a notorious serial killer for, eternal fame. But on the other hand, he's writing letters to Sylvester Stallone. He is totally convinced Sly is going to discover him, fly him to America, and cast him as the next Rocky. He just kind of glosses over the fact that he's overweight, has zero acting experience, and doesn't speak a word of English. Minor details, right? But for a lot of guys in there, there's one survival strategy that trumps all the others: the fantasy of escape. It's an obsession. It's what gets them through the day.
but it's also what sets them up for a huge, crushing fall. And we're not talking about just idle daydreams here. According to our source, these were detailed plans. We're talking weaving bedsheets into ropes, making knives out of can lids, timing guard patrols. And the plans for after the escape? Even crazier. Ambushing cops for their guns, robbing jewelers, and then flying to South America to become hitmen for a cartel. But the reality? Well, the reality was usually a lot more pathetic. And this story about a manhole cover just captures it perfectly. So 2 guys spot this thing in the yard, and they are convinced this is it. This is their secret tunnel to freedom. They work like crazy to pry the super heavy lid off. Their hearts are just pounding. They're about to be free. They finally get it open. They look down, and it's just a shallow pit filled with tiny, impassable pipes. It leads nowhere. You can just imagine the silence as they slide that heavy cover right back into place. The dream is over. And really, that story brings us right back to the biggest question hanging over this whole place. In a system where the staff seem to break the rules of sane behavior and the patients are the ones finding these bizarrely creative ways to survive, it really makes you ask, who is truly being confined here, and what are they being confined by?